At that point, if you now look at the end of the story, these areas in the world, these lakes, Kivu Lake, etc., if you have too much of this zooplankton, they eat too much of the methanotrophs, and the result is that you have lots of methane which goes into the air. If you have a good ecosystem in which the fish controls the zooplankton, and the zooplankton then leaves enough space for the methanotrophs, you have a good lake. So we learned that some of those hotspots of methane emission in the world can be much improved if we make the right balance between organisms. That is also very important. Take home. Microbiologists have a series of challenging tasks in dealing with these diffuse methane emissions, particularly our own gastrointestinal emission. But what can we do? No, I don't know any cure, but when it when it deals with the rumen, with the cows, I think we should try to do something, because it's not affordable to continue the way we do it today. And then we have these faulty waste technologies like the septic tank and like these digesters. And I indicated to you that thinking about good food chains, that this might be also very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I got a bright idea. Once in a while it happens. And I thought about all of this, and I said, let's think out of the box. You know that, you have seen already that this cow produces a lot of methane. And you know that there is also the animal rights movement, and particularly in our countries we have now an animal rights party, and they say, by God, this is not any more acceptable that the cow, in order to lactate, to produce milk, the cow is subjected to the bull every year, right? The cow has no choice every year. Huh. So, we need the cows, but we should maybe get away from that rude treatment of that poor animal. So I got a brilliant idea of a new food chain. Here is the cow on the side. You see it? So the cow grazes and doesn't produce necessarily any milk anymore. It doesn't have to see the bull every year. It produces gas. At the end of the day, it comes to my reactor. I just unload the gas. I produce with the gas my microbial protein and my dairy products. And I have a cow which can graze and has its own animal rights, and I don't, yeah, okay? I've sent my proposal to Bill Gates. I'll see if money comes along. Of course, it's a joke, but the story is that the zootechnological area of the production animal, we have to start thinking in other ways. I come to my point number 3, briefly. We talk so much about the Paris agreements and the CO2. You see there my Ferrari, it produces CO2, yes. But in the soil, just by plain respiration, you see that the amount of CO2 which is produced by the soil as such is 10 times the CO2 by mobility. So we must think twice. Can we not do something along that line? Can we do something with that vast amount of bacteria which are there in the soil? People have agreed, also your country has subscribed to the Paris Agreement, and that means that we all together will store per year, listen, 4 to 5 gigatons. Giga is 10 to the power 9. We all agreed in Paris, whole signature, so many tons of CO2 we will store. Now, Paris is finished, we have already another meeting. How can you store the CO2? Oh, you can store it in the deep soil, and you can use it to have enhanced oil recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, the story, the real facts are, they have scientists, they have talked about it, but it will only meet at the very most 4 to 5% of what they have signed. Nobody wants to use the CO2, it's too expensive to explore, to have oil recovery. They have talked and said, okay, we will use the soil and we will capture CO2 to make chemicals. 1% at the most of the target it represents. What else? Oh, in Iceland they say, oh, we will make CO2 and make methanol for mobility. Nobody supports it. So this Paris Agreement, or say 4 to 5 gigatons of CO2 captured per year in our story. This carbon capture and storage, it's something where the politicians have fooled themselves and fooled the public. What can we do? In principle, there is a beautiful solution to it, and it's as follows. And every farmer knows this. If he does a good organic farming, not chemical fertilizer, he builds up 1 ton, 0.7 ton carbon per hectare per year. There are lots of old technologies which are called terra preta plug-in soil, in which they, on a sandy soil which was infertile like hell, by bringing in charcoal, by bringing in some organic matter, you can really build up this organic matter and make it a fertile soil, and you do carbon capture. And this carbon capture is good for the farming, it's good for the environment, it's good for everybody. So this is the line to go. What is then a potential solution? You remember my reactor and you remember my hydrogen oxidizing bacteria. So I need electricity. I use the electricity to split water in oxygen and hydrogen. I bring it in this reactor. I take CO2. I can take ammonia. And in the city of Ghent, where I come from, 260,000 inhabitants, I take that ammonia and I then go through this reactor, and every day, ladies and gentlemen, out of my sewage treatment plants in the new story that I am proposing, goes a tractor of 20 tons, clean, slow-release fertilizer contributing to carbon capture and storage. Isn't that a beautiful proposal? Should I get the Nobel Prize? Definitely. Thank you. Where are we standing? This is the reactor. We have a reactor of 0.7 cubic meter, but it works. And I hope, once again, that one or other philanthrope will come along and start to subsidize this, and then we can go further with it. You will say, hey, Willy Verstraete, have you made the calculus? Indeed. How about the economics? Well, when I use fertilizer nitrogen, it's cheap. It's cheap because the Haberbosch, because the BASF, because the big industry never has to be made accounting for the externalized costs. You remember? Lots of damage is done, they never have to pay for it, they never are confronted with it, so that's why it's so cheap. Now, if I make organic carbon, which stores carbon and which doesn't give all those damage to the environment, it's 5 times more costly, but it's also 5 times more effective. What is the price that it would cost for us? Suppose all of us, reasonable people, not Mr. Trump, but all the rest, we decide that we will do organic fertilizer, that we will do carbon capture. What is the price? It will cost us €300 per inhabitant per year. Is that impossible? I'll ask you, how much do you pay at home for your garbage? How much do you pay for your sewage? It's of that order. So it is possible for, if we in our reasonable world, in the best of worlds, if we look, we can really deal with that CO2 capture story at a reasonable cost. All we have to think is think out of the box.